Hello, Writer Moms, and welcome to our 12th lesson in the series, Reawaken the Dream, a course for the Writer Moms. That means we're a third of the way through the class. Can you believe how quickly the time has flown? Well, we're going to be learning our 7th character trait today, so let's get right to it. We're building that power of living characters, and we're going to be turning the character profile diagram into a character profile 2. Part 2 of that is coming. So first we'll do a quick review of the last lesson, loyalty. Remember how with loyalty we had a triad of emotions where we had a race to a new food supply. We contrasted that with responsibility and guarding the dog's own food supply. And we saw that the actual underlying emotions were really quite simple, and you only had to put yourself in the grocery store to see how they differ. One was, a new line has opened up. And the other one was, why is that guy eyeing my purse? So very, very different emotions, even though both involved a dog and a bowl of food and some kind of a race. We saw that the lost side of loyalty was betrayal. What a stain of betrayal. And backbiting. And when you look at backbiting, you can see the tie into the race to the new source of food. Get a couple of animals racing, and what are you going to get? If one is determined to get the food, but it's behind, you're going to be getting some backbiting. And the victory state, we said there was a little bit of a quandary there. If there's a race involved, isn't the victory state winning the race? And we said, no. The victory state has to do with what you value. If you value your friends and your family and those very close to you, you're going to choose loyalty to them over gobbling up the new source of food. And we saw something really interesting with loyalty. We saw that the scale and the stain split apart. And all of the character traits we'd studied up till then, they kind of went together. If the scale was great, the stain of not doing it was great too. But here we see with loyalty, the first hint of betrayal casts a terrible stain, even though the scale might be quite low. This is the first time we've seen it, but it's not the only time we'll see it. So, are you ready for this week's character trait? Affability. Affability has to do with general pleasantness, just being nice to the people around you, easy to talk to. Affability. We'll do our analysis pretty soon, but let's start, as we always do, with the scenarios. Roberta wasn't quite sure when quarreling became the norm for her marriage. At first, she was just on tippy toes, just trying to make everything just so perfect, and just got bickered at all of the time. Finally, she got to the point where she tuned a deaf ear to it, and the world didn't fall apart. And soon after that, she started giving it back, and nowadays, she gave as good as she got. Affability. The fellow went into the coffee shop, the coffee bistro, the place where he always went to get his morning coffee. Generally, he loved going there. The cashier was so cheery. She always had a big smile. She didn't even have to ask his name. She wrote his name right on the cup. She even knew what he was going to order, and she was just all smileys. Normally, that made him feel really good, but this morning he was not in a very good mood at all, and her cheeriness was driving him crazy. But he valued that general cheeriness so much that he painted a smile on his face and was as pleasant as he could possibly be. Pretty soon he had his coffee in hand and had taken a few sips, and well, was it the caffeine? Was it the smile that snuck through to his heart? He wasn't quite sure, but he sort of was thinking maybe today wouldn't be such a bad day after all. Affability. Lex had been sent to group therapy. He'd been a kid that had been in trouble a number of times. This was a new experience to him. There he was, sitting in a circle with a bunch of other kids. I didn't know who they were. So when it came his turn to talk, he started boasting about his exploits the night before. And he got a couple of chuckles. And a couple of guys kind of looked at him pretty good. Ooh, that made him feel better. So he exaggerated the daring and told even more. And pretty soon they were all sharing their exploits and their delinquency and all getting laughter. Affability. Roberta again. This time she was in a quilt store. There was a guy behind the counter. Men weren't all that common a sight in a quilt store, and she did want to make a quilt for her grandson. So she marched up to the counter and asked him for help. Why, he was glad to help her. He took her all around the store on a whirlwind trip. She picked out way more fabrics than she'd planned, but every time she made a choice, he complimented her on how great her color selection was. Then at one point he said, "You must be an expert quilter." Well, that sure made Roberta feel good. A little while later, he walked her over to the tool section and pointed out a number of tools that expert quilters find very valuable. So, of course, they went into the order too. And now here she was coming out of the store with 2 very heavy bags and a credit card receipt that she hoped Edwin would never see. Affability. Okay, so affability. We always start with our triad of emotions. That's our reliable starting point. And the struggle in our triad of emotion right now you could think of it as being 2 cats. I've drawn 2 dogs. But if you've got a cat at home and you bring another cat into the household, you can be pretty sure that it's not going to be very affable. So let's save the 2 cats for the lost state and go with the 2 dogs. Now, dogs have a general tendency to be affable with one another, wagging their tails and sniffing all appropriately. But bring another dog into the house, put his food bowl right next to yours, have your owner petting him and grooming him. That could be a little different struggle to be affable. But affability involves the debt of civility that we owe to one another. The lost state, well, it's not a fight. No, it's not anger. That's a different situation. No, and it isn't 2 individuals firmly arguing rationally, sanely, their differing sides of a principle. No, that's not the lost state either. The lost state of affability is quarreling and bickering, the type of thing that one does with another when they figure they can get away with it. Just plain being disagreeable. That is one of our 2 lost states. And the other lost state, rather interestingly, is flattery. Very, very different. Flattery also has to do with not genuinely being affable at all. You're putting on a face. You're putting a face on it. And in fact, there are many, many different levels of flattery. That's where the scale is going to come in with affability. You have the general required courtesy that maybe goes a little bit further than the required courtesy. Oh, excellent wine choice, sir. Excellent, excellent. Oh, ma'am, That dress compliments your eyes. Oh, it's so lovely on you. It's very mild. You hope to get a better tip from the guy with the wine. You hope to make the sale for the woman with the dress. That's flattery at a very low scale. But flattery gets a little more serious when there's an attempt at manipulation and when you're trying to get an advantage on someone based on flattery. So let's take a look at the victory state. The victory state is just generally being pleasant. It's the kind word or gesture. It's welcoming a stranger, even if you have to be fairly reserved because of the times they are. You can't just be outrageously welcoming of an unknown stranger, but just the general tendency to be nice and pleasant to one another. That's the victory state. And if you stop and think about it, remember when we talked about the anchor traits versus the wing traits? We said that the wing traits were the zone of chaos. Things get a little wild and crazy when people are grumpy at one another. And we said that the anchor traits, that was the zone of stability. And that's when everybody's nice and pleasant to one another, life just gets a whole lot easier. Affability belongs to the empathy group. We now have 3 character traits in the empathy group, and all 3 of them have to do with just pleasantly being able to get along with one another. And they also have something very much to do with a certain debt that is owed. The debt can be just as mild as with loyalty when we said the who got here first debt, very, very mild, or the very mild pleasantness of the gentleman who comes into the store, or the little bit more serious one when taking care of the responsibilities that you've taken on or owning up to consequences when something didn't turn out the way you'd have to. But they all have to do with a certain debt of loyalty, and they all have very much to do with our relationships with other people. So now we get to part 2. We are going to be continuing our work on turning the character profile diagram into a character profile tool. And I want to start out with looking back at our 3 traits that we had in our empathy group. Do you remember them? Affability, responsibility, loyalty. We said that that if most people that you and I know probably have those traits in the anchor or the base position because we tend to choose friends that are like us, and we're nice, aren't we? So, but not everyone has a household where they grow up with that. So can you imagine a fellow who is stuck growing up in a household where nobody is nice to one another, where they chew each other out and backbite all the time, where nobody takes responsibility, and where nobody's loyal to one another? Just think of the scars that could place on you. Think of our character who was in the group therapy. Now that's an interesting story, isn't it? They were all being affable to one another, but they were all obviously very delinquent. So they were making bad use of that affability. And we got to wonder, what kind of a household did these poor guys grow up in? So we're going to use that concept of a poor fellow who grew up in a household where there was no affability, where there was no loyalty, where there was no responsibility. They're all up there, wing or pinnacle. And we're going to have another character come into the scene. And this character has all 3 as base traits: affability, responsibility, loyalty, base traits. But our new character, all those nice base traits, has orderliness as a wing trait. And owing to his lack of orderliness, he forgot to bring along, he's on the bus, he forgot to bring the name of the bus stop that he was supposed to get off at to visit his friend. So he's kind of frantically looking out the window, hoping he recognizes landmarks. And he gets off the bus at the wrong stop. and he runs into our fellow who grew up in a household with no alphabetity, no loyalty, no responsibility. And we are going to go through the process of placing those character traits for those two characters. And I've created a whole separate color for the word place, because I'm not talking about writing. I'm not talking about jotting down. I'm not talking about just making a quick diagram. I'm talking about a very, very, very formal process of placing. And we're going to do some placing right now. So first of all, what are the steps in placing? There's 4 background steps. They're the ones in green. And then the 5th step is placing the traits. We're going to go through every one of these. So the first step that we're going to do is define our characters. We're used to 4310. 4310 is a section in our note box, ideas for characters. Those are random characters that don't connect with anything else in our story. And so most of our homework assignments, and these guys are going to be in your homework assignment, are going to be of that type, of just random characters, and they'll be defined in 4310. If it's for your own projects, 4410, 4510, you've written a bunch of works already and you're up to 4810, bravo. But it'll always be this 4 something 10, your characters. So we're going to create the 2. I had to give them names. You can give them your own names. I just picked names. I said Nick is going to be the affable guy, and I made him character 0.01, and Stuart is going to be the sour guy. I made him character 0.02. So what are these? You should know these are, I'll let you answer. That's right, they're topics. So is the next thing you're going to do make a topic card? That's iffy. Here's my feeling about it. If it's just these random characters that come out of the blue, make a topic card if you want. If you think you'll develop them for some future use and you're going to really use them a lot, make a topic card for them. Otherwise, I'd just say skip the topic card. However, if it's a character that's going to be one of your characters and in your story, and it's character 1, your hero, and character 2, your love interest, by all means, make your topic cards. You're going to want those neon cards to be able to pick out in a hurry your heroes, notes on your hero, and your notes on your love interest. So, those first 2 steps. Next, we're going to make a blank character profile diagram for each character. Totally blank. We're going to fill them in later. 431001.1. I advise that 0.1 always be your character profile diagram. It's the thing you're going to look at the most. Blank for Nick, and a blank one for Stuart, the name I gave to the sour guy. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to create a blank memory prompt list. Ooh, what's a memory prompt list? Well, here's Nick's. This is the front side of a file card, and there's Nick. And 0.2, I highly recommend that you leave 0.2 for your memory prompt list. Memory prompt list? Here's Stuart's, character 2.2. But what's a memory prompt list? Well, we're going to see what a memory prompt list is in the process of placing the character traits one by one. This is a very, very, very specific process, and this draws on another branch of theory. We're going to draw on the work of memory experts. Memory experts are those incredible people who can memorize these crazy long lists of totally unrelated words. They can spit them back to you. They can recite them forwards and backwards. They can give you every other one, every third one, backwards every other one. They're just crazy what they can do with just a little bit of time and this long list of crazy stuff. How do they do it? Well, I had a language teacher who is very, very big in this process. In fact, he puts his entire book is oriented around this whole idea. So he explained it besides just teaching it. And the memory experts use the concept of a memory palace. The memory palace can be a very complicated geographical area. And the idea is that you get to know key spots in this memory palace. Well, do we have anything that's like key spots? Of course we do. We have our character profile diagram. We have 8 spots around the rim. Our character profile diagram becomes our memory palace. So how does it work? You reach the first location in the palace, and you take the first item on your list and you install it at that location. Say the first location is the front door. You're standing there, you picture yourself looking at the front door, and you take the item from the list that somebody gives you, grapefruit. And so you're standing at the front door and you picture the handle of the door. It's not a normal doorknob, it's a grapefruit. It's a grapefruit sitting on the doorknob. And then you picture yourself turning the door to open the door, holding onto the grapefruit. Now you've installed grapefruit on that front door, the first position in your memory palace. And that power of giving it an emotional punch, something surprising, something visual, something in motion, preferably something that you can maybe even smell. Grapefruit even has a smell to go with it, but something that ties it to that location. These things turn out to be so powerful that they can quickly slot in to their very, very well-known memory palace. They can quickly slot in all of these items that somebody throws at them, bing, 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 and give them a punch, 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 and they can come back and go through the whole list just by picture themselves walking through their memory palace. It really, really works. And why does it work? It works because we've offloaded onto the subconscious mind the whole concept of what order they come in. The rational mind doesn't need to think about that. We've offloaded onto the less verbal side of our brain the picture and the funniness of grabbing a doorknob with a grapefruit. Excuse me. And that is exactly the process that we're going to adopt when we place our traits one by one by one. We're not going to leave it to memory because we've got enough time. We're going to commit it to a card. So for example, let's take our first character, Nick, and our first trait that we're going to give him, affability. We know we're going to place affability as a base trait, so we know where we're going to put it, to place it on the diagram. And what we do when we install it in that place is we think back on why was it that Nick became so affable. We try to put ourselves into the situation. So for me, what I pictured his mom smiling at him super warmly and just, ooh, just one of those wonderful mom smiles that you just, oh, just precious, precious, precious child. One of those little mom smiles that says, oh, you were so dear to me. And so on our memory prompt list, we put the first character trait. These can come in any order. It's just the order that you place them. Affability and a few words that will bring you back. Make you see that grapefruit on the doorknob. This is your grapefruit on the doorknob. And you install it as you think about his mom's smiles. You write this in on the character profile diagram, just thinking of his smiles. And thereafter, you can merely touch. And I do recommend touch, fingertip, touch, neck, affability, and just put yourself right into that smiling, seeing those smiling eyes coming at you. In the same way, one by one by one, carefully and individually, we'll next place loyalty. We know where it's going to go. And in this case, I told myself a little story that his big sister defended him from bullies at school. And I just pictured those bullies were just getting in his face. I was thinking of Dan from the last lesson. And his big sister came up to him and said, "You leave my little brother alone." And just thinking of being frightened and then being so relieved when his sister came up to him. Oh, oh, that was so wonderful, so wonderful. And then there it is. You add loyalty to the chart. Loyalty. And touching loyalty, bringing back to mind how wonderful to have his sister helping him. Then finally, responsibility. I thought of responsibility, the story I told myself with his little brother came running into the room and knocked his whole tower of blocks over. And oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I'm so sorry. His little brother taking responsibility. And likewise, I thought of that when I added responsibility to this chart. Touch responsibility and think of the blocks and the little brother being so sorry. And finally, the trait of orderliness. Well, we've got this scenario handed to us as part of our given in the assignment. He forgot to take the name of the bus stop with him on the bus. So when we install this, we can think of him being frightened. Of course, remember, fear is the emotion that goes with the struggle of orderliness. And he's trying to rack his brain to see if he can remember what the bus stop was. And so we put orderliness up here. I highlighted it in green just so you know that's where I placed it as a wing trait for Nick. So now, anytime you want to write Nick into any story you ever want to write him in, my method that I would use, and I recommend to you too, really, really do this. Nick, bring Nick to mind. Did you make a picture of Nick when you wrote Nick's name? Did you give him an age, a hair color, freckles? I don't know. What did you make him look like? And then work your way around the diagram. Affability. Oh, the mother's smiling eyes. Loyalty. Big sis saved him from the bully. Responsibility. Oh, little brother said sorry for the blocks. Orderliness. Oh no, I forgot the name of the bus stop. And just in that moment, the whole emotional environment of Nick is back in your heart. Is back as firmly in your heart as for that memory expert. And if for any reason it's gone too long and it's gone cold, you're not out in left field because you've got a cheat sheet. You can always go back to the memory, to your prompt list, and remember what it was. But I'm going to tell you something right here and right now. The power, the emotional power that you work up in your heart when you create this memory prompt list, that is the power that you will get out when you need it. Fluff in, fluff out. Take the time that it takes. Place that grapefruit on the doorknob. Smell the grapefruit. Take the time it takes. Then we have Stuart. I named him Stuart. You get to name your guys whatever you want to name him. He has 3 traits as well. Affability. I pictured for Stuart his dad yelling at him for no good reason. Just kind of walked in the door and his dad starts yelling at him. Blah! For loyalty, I pictured his big brother teasing him in front of his friends. Right in front of his friends. Oh, you should have seen how he spilled his cereal this morning at breakfast. My gosh, the Cheerios were all over the floor. Ha, 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 ha. Responsibility. Mama, I don't know what happened to that lamp. Nope, I didn't break it. I don't know what happened to that lamp. Crash. Feel the crash. Feel his sense of, oh no, as it tips over. Put the emotion in. Make the emotional investment. You know from that memory expert, they can say, grapefruit, Cheerios, pancakes, socks, and name them fast, and they can put an emotional state in that fast. You won't be that fast at first. You'll get faster. So take the time it takes. And if you take the time it takes right now to drill it and get it to really sink in, then you'll get the power back out, and it'll get easier and easier and easier to put yourself into the emotional state. Now, when it comes to the diagram, this is what I did with it. You notice I only said in the assignment that he grew up in a household where he never saw affability, loyalty, or responsibility. I didn't tell you where you have to place them. I said, make a diagram. Well, this is what I decided to do with him. I decided to make loyalty and responsibility pinnacle traits and affability a wing trait, because it occurred to me that he at least has the option of being friendly towards his friends. So I put it at wing. I didn't put it up there at pinnacle. Guess what? Because I didn't begin to tell you what to do with it, you could have done something totally different. You could have said his father yelled at him for no good reason. He went off to his room and resolved, I will never yell at anybody for a bad reason. And he might have affability as an anchor trait. Isn't that fun? You get to decide what his life experience is going to do to him. Let's install it with, take your story with you to the character profile diagram and tell yourself, when you put the character trait there, why did it go there? Why? Why was it why did I make affability win? What's the story? I know what the affability thing is. His dad yells at him, and his friends probably are pretty gruff with one another too, but every once in a while you find something, you're sitting around in a group therapy session and a bunch of strange guys laugh. It's at least in a wing position. So that all of our, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the homework. We've got a little more to cover, but the homework assignments from now on, the whole rest of the course, are going to involve at least 2 people. You'll be given a scenario. Sometimes you'll be given character traits. Presumably, it'll be the character trait of the lesson, and maybe sprinkling in some that you've had before. And your job is going to be always, 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 before you do your homework scenarios, you will be going through these steps. You give them a number in your character profile list. You never know when one of these characters is going to turn out to be handy. And what I did in mine, I didn't have room on the card to show you, but on mine I put down Nick, the affable, bus stop, and Stuart, rough household. Something in there that tells me a little bit about what the homework scenario was, so that when you read the character in your character definition, when you defined your character, it'll bring that character back to you, so you know if you want to use him for another assignment, or if you want to use him in one of your stories, it's handy for you. But you will always be defining the character, probably not making a topic card. I used a character from my novel for 2 of our scenarios, Roberta, and so she's definitely got her own neon card. And then create the character profile diagram for this character, and create a blank memory prompt list for the character, so they're both blank. And then one by one, whatever character traits you give them, place those very consciously, very deliberately into your very simplified memory palace. This memory palace could not get any easier. Place it where you will. In general, remember, the ones on the left tend to be your introverted character traits, and the ones on the right are your external character traits. But that's not hard and fast, because as you can imagine, a very, very extroverted individual might have both of their other character traits, extroverted traits, whereas a very shy person, or a very uh, introverted person might have them both be pointing inward traits. So that's just in general. If you've got someone who is a mix of both, we generally put the outward facing ones on one side and the inward facing ones on the other. So we're almost finished. Homework assignments are going to be very, very important. I hope you're getting the PDF files, but because some people just don't. I don't know why. I can look at the list of subscribers, and not everyone picks up the PDF. So if you're not picking up the PDF, you need the homework. So I'm going to return to putting the homeworks in the cover letter, the weekly cover letter. So either way, you do need to sign up for the email list to get the homeworks. And they're going to become increasingly involved, and you're going to want to do them. So sign up for that list if you haven't done it. And there's one more thing that we've got to revisit. We started it last week. We need to add another entry under empathy. These are my very own. I'm building these for my own personal use. And what I did to kind of make it a little bit more legible, if you are on the email list and you get the PDF, they're easier to read there. But I did one for you just so that you can get an idea of where we are with empathy. And I'm not wanting you to copy my wording. It's very important that you not. I've provided, both in the last lesson and I will put it in this lesson as well, an appendix with about a paragraph each for the struggle, the loss, and the victory states. And the reason is that you need to put them in your own words because that's how it's going to relate to you. So I've given a paragraph on each so that you can't just write the whole paragraph in, so that you have to pick and choose from the paragraph of description of what you want to put for the description of that trait. So that's it. We've reached the end of another lesson, and we have one more lesson left. A very exciting additional piece of information on how to turn the character profile diagram into a character profile tool. But I hope you are already beginning to feel that there's an awful lot of power that's coming out of that. There's an energy that it delivers energy. Do it. Try it. When you create these guys and you come back and you touch those traits, you will be surprised at the little wake-up boost, the little energy boost, the enthusiasm that you will get for writing just by looking at those. And then just feel yourself, be a method actor here. Feel yourself being Nick or whatever you named him. And he's just stepped off the bus stop. And there's a guy over there leaning against the fence post eyeing him. What's going to happen? Well, write it out and then post it in our Facebook group. Our Facebook group is getting super lively. You might have noticed in the interview section, we have another interview with Stephanie Ann Roy. She's one of us, so check that out. That came out last Monday. And just recently, we also added another visit with Victoria Crowder. She's preparing for NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, November. And so she's giving us all of the steps she's doing to prepare to clear the decks to write for the month of November. Don't we wish we could clear the decks and spend all that time writing? Well, we probably can't. I know I can't, but we're going to, a lot of us in the Facebook group are committing to do at least a little bit of writing every day in November. So join us in the Facebook community as well. We're starting to get a pretty exciting group. So I'm really glad that you're joining us. 1/3 of the way through having the power of living characters. See you next week. I'm Kathleen Spracklin, caregiver to the Writer Mom. Bye-bye.